Dumako tayo siguro dito sa mga katanungan habang nandito si Secretary Dominguez, dahil Secretary Dominguez ay hinihila sa lahat ng mga iba't ibang mga pagpupulong. Ngayon na nandito siya sa atin, Secretary Dominguez, yung tanong natin, maraming mga usap-usapan sa pagkakaroon ng mga bagong airport. Halimbawa, yung isa doon, sa huli naming pagdinig, ang pinag-usapan ay yung proposal ng airport sa Bulacan. At no cost to the government, malaking bagay ito sapagkat sabi hanggang 4 na runway ang malalagay dyan. Meron ng expandable to 6 yata or 2 expandable to 4. Basta malaki. Magkakaroon ng loop in terms of connectivity ang transportation ng San Miguel. Again, at no cost to us. Pumasa na po sa NEDA. Pero ang pinakahuling update po ay dadaan pa rin po sa DOF. Ang huling basa ko ngayon na report, itong San Miguel Corporation ay nakikipag-usap na kasama ng mga magagaling na magbibigay ng advice. I think yung isa doon ay isang financial institution at ang isa naman ay sanay katulad ng Sumitomo. So, Secretary Dominguez, ano po ba yung dahilan kung bakit hindi pa rin nadidesisyonan ito sa inyong tanggapan?
Thank you for inviting us to today's Senate hearing, Your Honors, and for giving us an opportunity to answer your questions on the Department of Finance's involvement in the approval of the airport projects. For us, the message in the last hearing and today also is clear. The government should accelerate the approval and implementation of airport proposals to ensure that tourists and our kababayans do not suffer an incident similar to the Xiamen Air similar to the Xiamen Air mishap occur. On the call of this Honorable Committee for Government to fast-track the implementation of airport proposals, we completely agree. We understand that as early as 2011, a JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency report was already released discussing the problems of NAIA's capacity, which incidentally was not acted upon by the past administration. One of the first acts of this administration was to begin the rehabilitation of the Clark International Airport to partially address the NAIA capacity problem. We were the first ones to take action. However, we cannot simply wave the magic wand and fix the problem overnight. This is why we at the DOF were puzzled when we heard that we were being invited today by the Honorable Chairperson to this committee to a hearing on the modernization and expansion of airports. In the last meeting, it was stated that the DOF needs to answer why they are hampering or delaying the approval of these projects. Before we share this with the committee, our role in the approval of the airport projects, let us first go back to the time the Bulacan International Airport proposal was presented. In a meeting in January 2018, the following questions came to our mind. First, how will the Bulacan Airport affect the Clark International Airport, given the government's investment in Clark? Your Honors, all airport projects are real estate projects. The real estate value of the new Clark City is currently $14 billion and government has committed an additional 12 billion pesos. We wanted to know how the Bulacan Airport, which is just 25 kilometers away from Clark, will affect the value of the new Clark City, which is, by the way, the property of the Filipino people. Second, how will the Bulacan International Airport affect the traffic in the area? Do we need additional lanes in the North Luzon Expressway to be constructed? Do we need to change the alignment of the proposed rail system to Clark? Third, Who is the proponent and what is its actual financial capability? We wanted to know whether the proponent, San Miguel Holdings Corporation, actually had the financial capacity to undertake the project. Initially, the Department of Transportation reported that San Miguel Holdings had a total equity of 60 billion pesos in 2016. Considering the usual financial mix of 70-30, 70% debt and 30% equity in a PPP project, the construction of the Bulacan Airport will require San Miguel Holdings to infuse around 200 billion pesos in equity, which we are not sure is going to happen. In order to answer these questions, among others, a second meeting was required. In April of 2018, the project was approved by the NEDA board. As a condition for the approval, we were required to submit our inputs. Even though we thought it was not proper for us to submit our comments, as the implementing rules and regulations of Republic Act number 6957 or the BOT law provides that the DOF shall review the draft contract once negotiations are completed. Nevertheless, we compiled the issues discussed at the NEDA, ICC, and board meetings. Contrary to statements made in the last hearing, we guarantee that there were no new comments added that were not already discussed before the NEDA board approval. We take this opportunity to categorically say we have not caused the delay in the Bulacan Airport. As a matter of fact, we are even providing assistance to accelerate the approval and implementation of the project. One of the helpful suggestions we made to the DOTR was to require the execution of a joint and several liability agreement, which would make San Miguel Corporation, the parent company, stand behind San Miguel Holdings, the private proponent, which is financially at this point incapable of undertaking a 700 billion peso project. However, in page 5, item P of the draft minutes of the meeting as of April 25, 2018, 6th NEDA board meeting, a representative from the Office of the President stated that, I quote, the financial capacity of the proponent corporation should be the one evaluated and not the financial capacity of the mother company backing the proponent corporation, unquote. That's not my comment, ma'am. That is somebody else's. As regards the DOF's role in the approval process of airport projects, Book 4, Title 2, Chapter 1, Section 1 of Executive Order Number U-292, Series of 1987, or the Administrative Code, provides that the mandate of our department is to ensure the sound and efficient management of financial resources of the government. It is my responsibility to not only to look after all government assets, but also to manage our contingent liability, which, for the information of this body, is estimated now to be at least 309 billion pesos as of 2018 for PPP projects. Meticulous evaluation is necessary since in several instances, projects were approved in the past by the NEDA board, which were more profitable than projections during the appraisal stage. Let me give a concrete example. The Mactan Cebu International Airport is actually earning more profits than projected. In 2017, it registered a net income of 1.1 billion pesos. This is 48% higher than the 752 billion pesos forecasted in the financial model of the project. This indicates that the actual returns of the concessionaire would be significantly larger than what was originally estimated. And yet, government still made the commitment that there will be no other competing airports in Mactan and Cebu. Now, should the government later on want to build a new airport in the area to serve OFWs and other tourists, we would be required to reimburse not just market value of the infrastructure assets, but also all the future profits of the commercial business until the end of the concession. This means that we would have to reimburse the concessionaire in Mactan around 20 billion pesos just to build another airport. While 309 billion pesos is an alarming number, what is more worrying to us are the type of commitments we guarantee. Let me give you another example. There are potential claims by water concessionaires against the government estimated at 80 billion pesos just because the performance undertaken, which was executed by a former DOF secretary, guaranteeing that the government will not interfere or question water utility rates. Moreover, as I mentioned in the Mactan Cebu International Airport Concession Agreement, the government committed that if it causes to operate any international or domestic airport in the Mactan and Cebu Islands, it is considered the grantor in default, that's the government, making us liable for termination payments. Essentially, it will cost us a tremendous amount of money to build a new airport in these areas, even if there is an unexpected increase in passenger demand. Your Honors, these examples emphasize that the actions we do and the documents we sign have ripple effects on the next generations. The burden is upon my office to ensure that future generations do not suffer consequences from poor decisions of previous government. As Book 4, Title 2, Chapter 1, Section 2 of the Administrative Code, and as reiterated in the Department of Justice Opinion Number 61, Series of 2004, and 13 Series of 2013 states that the issuance of performance undertaking is within the discretionary power of the DOF, it being mandated by law to be primarily responsible for, quote, the sound and efficient management of the financial resources of the government, its subdivisions, agencies, and instrumentalities, unquote, and, quote, for the formulation, institutionalization, and administration of fiscal policies in coordination with other concerned subdivisions, agencies, and instrumentalities of the government, unquote. Let me ask you a question. Why don't we compare a farmer with a company investing in an airport? A farmer has no access to financing. He doesn't even own the land. In fact, he is the one who needs the subsidy or government guarantee. But these corporations who are making tremendous profit with access to banks require a guarantee even if it is their own fault that an airport is not operational. These government guarantees for force majeure and material adverse government actions can make a project bankable, but it will not turn a bad project into a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Dominguez, for your inputs and clarification on the issues. I have a few questions
Please.
Also, but I would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, who filed also a resolution on the possible expansion and modernization of our airports. So, Secretary Dominguez, very quickly, for the record, you said that it's not the Department of Finance that is actually delaying the approval of the possible Bulacan Airport, but you are a member of the NEDA board, am I correct? So, as part of the NEDA board, one of the members, were you one of the ones that agreed to approve this project, or did you not vote for this project?
As chairman of the ICC first, the members of the ICC did vote for the project, and the NEDA board also did vote to approve the project.
So
And I
you're
stand
part of
by
the ones that
vote.
voted to approve. It has to be unanimous, am I correct?
I believe so.
So what made you approve it with all the other questions you still have in mind? You mentioned earlier, you were saying something like you had to assess the impact on your investment, of the government's investment in Clark, which is about 14 billion, etc. You also had your concerns about the possible construction of roads and how it will impact traffic. And you also had your questions about the financial viability of the investor. So with these questions, going into the vote in the NEDA board, do you still actually approve this project? Or do you already have those questions answered? That's why you approved it.
May I ask the NEDA board secretariat to quote the approval? Because I don't have it with me. The written approval, because I don't have it with me.
Because okay, before you read
Yes.
the actual quote, my question is this: can the NEDA board approve something but with conditions that they need to fulfill?
She'll have to read it,
Okay,
ma'am.
please go ahead and read that, and please identify yourself again, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair. I am Hazel Balyatan. I am the Director of the Public Investment Staff of NEDA, and I am also the head of the ICC Core Secretariat.
Okay, please go ahead and read it.
Okay. So, in our letter dated May 2, 2018 to Secretary Tugade of the DOTR, we informed that during the meeting of the on April 25, 2018 of the NEDA Board, the NEDA Board approved the unsolicited proposal for the Bulacan International Airport, as well as the reasonable rate of return, after-tax weighted average cost of capital as basis for negotiation by the DOTR with the proponent. The approval is subject to the finalization of the risk allocation matrix and the draft concession agreement, consistent with the ICC discussions and with inputs from the Department of Finance. So the project was approved with a total project cost of about 700 billion. And it is understood that the total project cost will be borne by the proponent and with no cost requirement from the government. So that is what is written, Madam Chair, in our letter.
So no wonder you really have they really have to provide their documentation on financial viability. As you were saying, you had your doubts about this, right? Because the mother company is not necessarily liable for this. You mentioned something to that effect.
When it was first submitted,
Yes.
it was submitted under the San Miguel
Holdings.
Holdings. Okay?
Okay.
So I asked them, can you please tell me what is San Miguel Holdings? Because that is the proponent.
Okay.
And they said the equity at a certain point in time was 60 billion, etc. I said, how can a 60 billion peso company finance a 700 billion peso project? So I said, why don't you ask the major company of the San Miguel Group to guarantee it, to be a joint and several proponent for this?
What's the
and as of
equity of
today,
the-
as of today,
yes.
there is no such undertaking yet.
But San Miguel, the mother company, has an equity of. Are you familiar with it?
I assume that it is sufficient, ma'am.
Okay, but you also mentioned, if I heard you right, somebody from Malacanang said that the mother company is not the one being evaluated, but the actual proponent. So the basis should be the equity of the proponent and not the mother company. Is that
Yes, ma'am. May I ask the lady to quote again the draft minutes of the April 25 board meeting?
okay? While you are looking for that, my question would be this: you were mentioning about the government's investment of 14 billion in Clark with an additional so many billions more, and the impact this might have, the Bulacan Airport might have on Clark. So what are your findings? Are you already done with that? Will it actually negatively affect the Clark development? Is this something that would...
The concern here, ma'am, is quite simple. We own about 30 or 35,000 hectares in Clark. That is owned by the Filipino nation. Okay. As Secretary of Finance, my job is to make sure that that there are optimal returns on government assets. So, if somebody is going to put an airport that is near 25 kilometers, it is natural for us to see how will that affect our own investment. We are investing around 12 billion pesos right now in the Clark Airport, not including the in the inherent value of the real estate that we own already in that area. In other words, we would like the Clark area to be able to lease out its land to companies because there is an airport close by. So I wanted to know how will an airport 25 kilometers away affect the value of that property?
This airport is 25 kilometers away?
That's what I believe, isn't it? Huh?
No.
Huh? Sorry, 65. 65.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? You have you're right. Your mandate, sir, is actually to make sure that government projects are financially viable and that we make some money out of it for the Filipino people. But the mandate of Secretary Togada is different in a way, because his is more transportation connectivity. So my question now is this, Secretary Togada. With the recommendation of Secretary Dominguez being concerned about Clark and the investment there, do you still think that in spite of this, we need that airport in Bulacan?
Number one, ma'am, let me put my answer in perspective. The approval was read, and it said subject to risk allocation matrix and other financial documentation. Risk allocation matrix. This has to be addressed. We cannot at this time say yes or no because this is being evaluated at this time. And if only to give or update this committee on what is happening, last Thursday, there was a joint meeting between the DOTR, NEDA, and DOF with the proponent, precisely to address the definition of risk allocation matrix, including the conditionalities of joint and solidary signatures and commitment, including the agreements on when and how and targets. This meeting was done only last Thursday.
Hindi, sir, teka muna, ganito na lang Huwag niyo muna isipin yung financial viability ng Clark. Iba muna yon. Ang isipin mo muna yung pangangailangan pagdating sa mga paliparan. At yung lapit nito sa city center, sa Metro Manila. Kung kayo lang, hindi nyo iniisip na meron tayong investment sa Clark, kailangan ba natin itong isa pang airport na to?
Oo, kasi naninindigan ho ako sa sinasabi kong the more the merrier. Merong maraming paliparan is better for the public. Yun ho yung konseptong aking tinatahak at tinutupad.
Tama po, and I appreciate your honesty here. Kasi actually, our secretaries, Clark has much to offer, not just the airport. I mean, the space itself, the expanse of it, maybe the trade zones there. So it's not just the airport, but the immediate need of more runways that are closer to Metro Manila is definitely obvious even as of now. So, from what I hear from the finance secretary, you're still assessing the risks involved for Clark. So are we saying that because of the 14 billion investment in Clark, this might stop future investments of an airport that is closer to Metro Manila? Because 14 billion, this is dollars, I suppose, no? $14 billion for Clark development, sir?
I beg your pardon, ma'am?
The investment in Clark is $14 billion, you were saying?
No, the current value
is 14
of
billion.
Clark is around $14 billion.
But how much are we losing every year because of airport congestion? Malaki rin po yan, di ba? Malaki rin yung ating investment. Anyway, it just seems to me that considering the investment in Clark alone as something that will determine whether or not we should have another airport might be a little limiting. But of course, that's why we have this hearing here, so that we can we actually understand what's going on in our secretary's mind.
Yeah, may I just add, ma'am, that when you are going to evaluate an airport, you have to figure out what it's going to cost us, the national government. Number one, obviously, if it's going to negatively impact the value of our property, that's a cost. Number two, if it's going to require, because there's going to be a lot more passengers there, if it's going to require an upgrading of our transportation along the NLEX,
Yeah.
then it's another cost. If we're going to have to put another highway along the coast, that's another cost. So we want to see the entire cost of the project, both what we put out and what this airport will take away from the property that we already own.
I
So those
understand.
are the costs that I think it
Quite
has
valid,
to be evaluated, or else we'll not be doing our job.
Right, especially for the DOF. That's your mandate, to make sure that there's a return on investment that's good for the government. But how soon would you be able to come up with your decision for this and your recommendation? Kailan po? Kasi sabi ni Secretary Tugate, by the end of the year, parang something like that in our last hearing.
Madam Chair, can I speak?
Yes, DOT, you said.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. The issue on Clark and Bulacan coexisting has been thoroughly analyzed by the OTR. As a matter of fact, even if the ongoing improvements in Clark is completed, it will only serve additional about 8 million passengers. The unconstrained demand for Metro Manila, Madam Chair, in terms of air traffic is already 65 million. Which means kung walang constraints yung NAIA, we should be doing 65 million by 2017. Now, we're doing 42 million. And we all know it's already congested. Tanggalin mo na yung 8 million plus 4 million ng Clark, that's only 12 million. So, ang laki, hindi ka pa rin naabot ng 65. Now, in terms of additional public infrastructure, the proponent, San Miguel, proposed to construct a toll facility that will connect the new airport to the existing North Luzon Expressway. We undertook some traffic and demand analysis, and we believe the new toll facility that will be constructed by San Miguel initially 6 lanes, expandable to 8 lanes, about 8 kilometers from Bulacan Airport that will connect to the Marilao Junction of the North Luzon Expressway would be more than sufficient to serve the volume of traffic envisioned in the new Bulacan Airport.
So, sinasabi po ninyo, actually, yung pag-aaral ng San Miguel, kasama dyan yung mga karsada that will lead to the airport. Dadagdagan nila ng lane.
Ni-require po ng ICC yun. And
Oo.
tama lang po, rationally so, no? Because
So,
how do
sang-ayon
you
po
bring
kayo?
in the traffic from Metro Manila, which is mostly the origin and destination of the bulk of the traffic, to the new Bulacan Airport? Kaya ni-require ng ICC na aralin yan. At ginawan naman ng pag-aaral yan.
So, nasumitin na ninyo yan sa DOF?
Na-submit na po namin yan. May traffic analysis, which is analyzing the model split. Ilan yung dadaan sa public roads, ilan yung mag-expressway. And that includes yung mga well-wishers, and then yung mga empleyado.
Well-wishers.
Pinag-aralan ho yun, yung in and out of the Bulacan
Mga
Airport.
maghahatid. O, siyempre, kasama sa kultura natin yun.
Tama ho yun.
Pero, Yusak Reynoso, ano ba kayo? Yusak kayo ng
Planning.
planning. Okay. So, sa inyo po, personal ninyong nire-recommenda to. Sa tingin nyo makakabuti. Kasi tama yung sinabi ninyo, kahit na fully utilized ang Clark, maayos, makakabawas lang yan ng mga 8 million passengers, di ba?
Mga maximum 12, sir. Ma'am.
Maximum 12.
Kasi there is an existing terminal now, about 3.5 million na passenger capacity. So yung expansion po, mga 8 million. So mga 11 or 12
So may kulang
million.
pa talaga tayo na ilan, di ba?
Well, malaki talaga yung kakulangan, Madam Chair. As I said, yung unconstrained demand, kung wala lang husanang constraint yung ating Manila International Airport, yung NAIA, yung pag-aaral ho ng 2011 na binanggit po ni Secretary Dominguez, dapat ho meron na tayong kinukuhang 65 million sa region pa lang po yun. Pero because of the constraint, congested na tayo at 42 million in NAIA. And Clark is picking up already, no? Almost 2 million, 2.5 million na po yung Clark, ano? From a very low, less than a million about a few years back.
So, 65 million yung ating congestion ngayon. Ay,
Hindi, yun po dapat ang traffic na nakukuha ng
Traffic
Manila, no?
natin.
Kung
So,
wala akong constraint. Yung po
So-
yung sinasabi ko na walang constraint. Ibig sabihin, kung kaya sana nung capacity natin yung 65 million, meron dapat na tayo nakuhang merkado. No, na
kaso, ang
65 million passengers per annum, no? Both international and domestic.
So parang kulang tayo, ay yung madadagdag lang sa Clark is about 8 million.
Yun po idadagdag ng Clark.
Oh, so 23 million na yung parang kulang natin. So talagang kailangan natin ng isa pa. Meron din isang iniisip na doon naman sa Sangli. Pero ano ba sa inyo, Secretary Tugade? Ano bang, para sa akin, parang mas detalyado at maayos itong proposal na sa Bulacan. Pero ano naman itong sa Sangli? Sino naman ang proponent dito?
Nabanggit ko na po nung nakarang meeting, meron hong tinatawag na government-to-government proposal ang province of Cavite sa DOTR na kung saan gusto nilang i-rehabilitate at i-improve yung Sangli. Wala pa hong detalye dyan na pagkakasunduan. Pag-uusap pa lang yan. Importante hong magkaroon ng usapan yung government to government kasi ho, sa ating panukala, prioridad ho yung may government to government.
Okay. Pero so sa ganito, just to make things clear, na-submit na ninyo sa DOF yung findings ninyo dun sa pag-aaral ninyo ng capacity ng airport, kung anong kailangan natin, yung mga connectivity sa kalsada. Am I correct, Mr. Reynoso?
Sa ICC po. Sa
Sa
ICC.
ICC.
Hindi po sa DOF. Sa Investment Coordination Committee po of the NEDA Board.
Okay, so ICC, you've received their recommendation?
Yes, Madam Chair. In fact, this information was submitted and considered when we were discussing the Bulacan International.
Okay, so Secretary Dominguez, I'm sure you're swamped with a lot of other things, but more or less, when would you be able to come up with your recommendation?
Ma'am, by law, I have to come up with the recommendation after the negotiations. That is the requirement of law.
So you have to negotiate first. Who will negotiate? DOTR will have
Yes,
to
ma'am.
negotiate with
Yes,
San
ma'am.
Miguel Holdings.
Yes. We are not part of the negotiating team because it's not correct. We are going to be the ones to review the entire proposal at the end of their negotiation. So it's not right that we are also part of the negotiating team.
Okay, but sir, here's the thing. Is part of the negotiation is how they're going to say how they're not going to negatively impact the value of our investment in Clark?
They already have all the NEDA comments, which incidentally, even though it's not required of us, we actually summarized it for the benefit of the DOTR. We summarized all the discussions in the NEDA board and all the comments and all the minutes. So they have those are their guidelines.
Okay, so can I ask you what weighs heavily on you, sir? Our
beg your pardon?
What is of paramount concern for you? Our investment in Clark or the need to expand our airport?
The contingent, the final cost of the airport, including our contingent liabilities, will be what will weigh heavily on us. The final cost to us. Ma'am, there is no such thing as free.
I understand. No free lunch.
When
okay.
they say, oh, no cost to the government, ma'am, that is not true. That is simply not true. As I mentioned in the other PPP agreements, we have contingent liabilities there. So our role is to make sure, number one, that the contingent liabilities are manageable, that they are reasonable, and that at no point is there going to be a moral hazard that
Absolutely.
that the proponent one day will just say, oh, I quit anyway, I'm going to get paid.
Yeah, I mean,
And there is no breach of that principle that nobody enriches himself in a contract.
well,
So-
I respect that, and
Yes.
I'm reassured that that's your mindset. Definitely, the previous contracts government has entered into, like the MRT situation, we're on a bind because of that. So I appreciate that you're doing that, sir. Thank you. But there are also added benefits to the government. For example, we may be spending a little here, but the return, more tourists would want to come here because of the convenience. Real estate around Bulacan, if developed properly and zoning is followed, will actually increase. So there's the added value also of that particular investment. Secretary, to that.
Well said, ma'am. In fact, alisin ko lang ho yung perception na yung posisyon ng Department of Finance is exclusive sa position or contradictory to our position. That's why we are having this meeting for one in this committee hearing, and we will be meeting, and we are already meeting with the proponent, with the Department of Finance, so that the balancing and reconciling points will have to be met and recognized.
Sir, but how will you reconcile this, Secretary Dominguez? Because you were saying that the proponent is the one that will be evaluated, and as you were saying, their equity might not be enough for the 700 billion investment. Isn't that your pronouncement saying this? Isn't that already a huge factor that your decision might be to the negative?
No, ma'am. I even suggested what they can do. I suggested that they come into the major corporation come into a
Guarantee?
joint and several liability. I suggested that.
Okay, so who's against it? Were you going to read? I think initially somebody from Malacanang you still didn't find it. Okay. No, thank you. I mean, Secretary Dominguez, I can totally, as I was saying, I am reassured that also that's your mindset. Ayaw natin niloloko talaga tayo ng maski na sino at yayaman sa paghihirap ng ating mga kababayan. Pero sa nakikita naman natin, basta merong reputasyon at maayos nga yung kontrata, kung babantayan naman ninyo, sa tingin ko, magiging okay. Dapat talaga stricto rin eh. I can see how it is. Kaya lang, yung time frame din natin, iniisip din namin na sana nga matapos na ito maaprubahan, or kung hindi maaprubahan, ay makahanap ka agad ng ibang
Yeah, there's a deadline in the negotiations, ma'am. I think it's 80 days. And then they have to do a Swiss challenge.
Okay.
Right?
So did you find it, ma'am?
Yes, Madam Chair. With regard to the earlier statement that there's an person from OP, so in our minutes, Deputy Executive Secretary Ong, Michael Ong, stated that in the Swiss challenge, the financial capacity of the proponent corporation should be the one evaluated and not the financial capacity of the mother company backing these corporations.
Okay, Secretary Ong is with
He's the Deputy Executive Secretary
for
of the OP.
of the OP.
President.
So there's a way around this, Secretary Dominguez. You were saying,
I suggested something, but to this date, I don't know, in fact, if that undertaking has been submitted. Yeah.
Mr. Reynoso,
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah, ma'am, just to give you an update, we conveyed that to the proponent, that the parent company must undertake a joint and several liability agreement with the proponent corporation, San Miguel Holdings. And they agreed.
They agree.
But prior to that, there were certain issues, major issues that they need to be cleared upon. That's why we called that meeting last Thursday, Madam Chair, and we're glad to report that we have almost agreed in principle on these major issues. And the proponents, San Miguel Holdings and San Miguel Corporation, committed to submit the revised draft concession agreement by Friday of this week, after which we will convene again the week after to discuss the new submissions, and hopefully, as the chair and the members of the committee wish, we will accelerate the conclusion of the process. As a matter of fact, simultaneously with this, Madam Chair, members of the committee, we are already preparing the terms of reference and the tender documents for the Swiss challenge.
Okay, so ganito yun, di ba sabi ni Secretary Dominguez, yes, 80 days, tapos magsi-Swiss challenge. So, kailan matatapos to? Yung final decision ninyo? Yeah.
As soon as we receive the revised concession agreement by Friday, Madam Chair, as I said, we will convene the week after, and we hope we will be able to complete the entire process before the year ends. I mean, at least we can advertise for the
No, but
Swiss
that includes
challenge.
already the timeline of the DOF? Kasi di ba dapat hinihintay pa ninyo yung... Hindi naman kailangan hintayan.
Ang proseso po, ma'am, we intend to conclude the negotiations, the basic negotiation. Ang negotiations po kasi hindi lang
and then they will evaluate it.
Yes, that's right. Because we
And
have
then
to
they have
submit.
80 days.
Now
So,
we have to issue first, a
Okay.
certificate of successful negotiation to be signed by the proponent the proponent corporation and the DOTR, and then submit it to the NEDA for review, final review, before we even publish the invitation for the Swiss challenge, Madam Chair.
Okay, so you're saying, but at the end of the year, you're done, and then that's when you're going to be looking at their findings for your comments. Is that correct, Secretary Dominguez?
Well, they can finish it as soon as they can. I don't think it should take until the end of the year. I think that is what is the prescription of the law. But they can finish it sooner.
So, can you finish it sooner?
What we are saying at this time, Madam Chairman, is we'll finish the entire process, including the Swiss challenge. This is the target and the timeline which we have set to ourselves before the end of this year. And already there are indications that the agreement can be accelerated because of certain agreement in principle on some major issue, one of which is the joint and solidary agreements of the parent company.
So, including the Swiss challenge by the end of this year.
Yes, ma'am.
And then,
Ayun ho
after
yung
that, what's the next step?
Pag nanalo ho yung proponent, di mag-start na ho sila ng construction.
Ganon. So, ganon
Pag may-
kabilis.
Yung review ho ng DOF is before the Swiss challenge.
Is correct. Okay, thank you for clarifying. So, yes.
Ang proseso po, ma'am, pag may challenger po, titignan namin yung offer ng challenger. If the proposed challenge proposal is better than the original proponent, we will have to go back to the proponent.
Ano ba
to
yan?
allow
Open,
them
close bidding yan, di ba? Hindi.
Open po to, open.
Open na.
Open po
So,
to.
pagkatapos
We will
ng Swiss
advertise,
challenge.
anybody who wanted to challenge the unsolicited proposal is welcome to submit a counter proposal, but based on the same terms and parameters, Kung wala pong nag-submit, walang sumali, we will just issue the notice of award and then sign the necessary documentations for the issuance of the notice to proceed. And for the proponent to immediately comply with the terms of the financial clause and submit to government the terms of the agreement.
Yusek Reynoso, busy kasi si Secretary Tugade. Bigay mo na lang sa amin dito, yung timeline ninyo, ha? With
do that,
approval,
Madam
of
Chair.
course, of the Secretary. But the Vice Chair now will continue
Yes,
with his
Madam Chair.
questioning.